Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first part of the Ultra Nation Unique tutorial on tanks. I'm going to introduce you to the various tank trees of the different nations and their intricacies. As such, I'm introducing chapters for the first time, so you can easily skip to what tanks you want to know about. Anyway, please remember to like and subscribe, since this helps me tremendously, and with this said, let's start off with Germany. Germany has easily the most extensive tank tree in the game, since, as we all know, the Germans love to build a lot of different tanks and a ton of versions of them on top. At the start of the game you have the Panzer I and Panzer II available, with Panzer I being in production. Don't dismiss it easily, yes. As a tank it's rather useless, but it is your only early source of self-propelled artillery and tank destroyers, though make sure when they are actually available. In Ultra, variants don't become researchable at the same time as the main model. As such, having old tanks in stockpile might be worth it. The Panzer II is basically a somewhat better Panzer I in terms of stats, but his light really begins to shine later on. Also, don't miss out on the armored cars. There is an important decision to be made here. Do you go for the Sdkfz 222 or the more expensive but quite a bit beefier 231? Well, on we go to the actual medium tanks, the Panzer III and the heavy medium Panzer IV. Contrary to what you are used to, rushing tank techs is really difficult in Ultra, so wait for the bonuses to come in. There is none for the Panzer IV though. Take note on the variants here, especially the Stück, the first assault gun for Germany. Now on the left you can see the Panzer 38T, the Czech light tank. It becomes available together with 5 full efficiency factory slots on it, with the occupation of Czechoslovakia, so make sure to have some ready to immediately start production. It's a solid light tank with much better stats than the Panzer II, and you will have to use it to beef up your tank divisions, since you will not have enough Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs early war. Later on it can be converted to the Marder III, a very punchy light tank destroyer. The Panzer III F is an important model that is tricky to get. Historically it was only introduced after the Battle of France, but it would have been available in 1939 for production if people had wanted it to. Biggest selling point is the 5cm gun, which packs quite a nastier punch than the early Panzer III. The Stu 42 is a nice improvement for your assault gun units, and the Stück 3F gives you your first dedicated medium tank destroyer. The Durchbruchswagen II, the first German heavy though, is something you might want to research, but it's not really better than the Panzer IV, apart from the armor, though costs a ton more. Your decision if you want to go for it. I wouldn't. The Panzer II F doesn't do too much for the Panzer II's offensive qualities, but increases the armor by almost 100%. The real reason you want it, though, are the variants. The Marder II is nice to quickly ramp up the number of light tank destroyers by conversion, and the Vesper is an excellent light self-propelled artillery, as MHV shows in this video here. The Panzer IV D F is largely an armor upgrade of the earlier model, but also gets more piercing due to the introduction of hollow charge ammunition. Becomes more reliable and cheaper to produce. Its variants are juicy, with your first medium AA tank, the first medium self-propelled artillery, and the first medium tank destroyer with an 8.8cm gun, though for my liking it's a bit weakly armored. Now we are getting close to the interesting stuff, but first the Panzer 38 F. A nice upgrade for the earlier model, with massively more armor. Its variants make it shine though. Everybody loves the Hatzer, right? Though that thing is a cheap 1944 light tank destroyer. More interesting early on are probably the Grille, light self-propelled artillery, and the light flak panzer, self-propelled AA. In comes the Panzer III L, the first official Panzer III with long 5cm gun. Overall, quite massive stat increase for basically everything, and probably something you really want to have before Barbarossa. The Germans certainly wish they had. And now we come to the really interesting part. The Panzer II looks is okay. I don't tend to use it much, since at this point I try to completely phase out light tanks and only use them for resistance suppression or conversion into self-propelled artillery and tank destroyers. Now, for the really special thing. The next tanks are only available in 1942 if you actually are at war with the Soviet Union and have to face their tanks. Otherwise, they are 1943 tanks. The Panzer III Late, or N, is a quite drastic change from the original purpose. It basically switches roles with the Panzer IV, taking up the discarded short 7.5cm gun and becomes an anti-infantry heavy medium. The Panzer IV G2H, though, takes now the role of the medium Panzer III and evolves into the main medium tank. Handing its short 7.5cm to the Panzer III, it now sports a long 7.5cm gun with high piercing, impressive armor and even better reliability. Not to mention the variants, the Stuck 4 medium tank destroyer, the Brombeer assault gun and the Ostwind medium self-propelled AA. And in comes the monster everyone was waiting for, the Tiger I. Its stats are absolutely brutal, and so are reliability, fuel usage and production costs. But damn, it packs a punch. Producing at least a few is advised, and also it's just cool to have them. Its variants are interesting, but as in reality somewhat irrelevant. Nonetheless, having the Ferdinand heavy tank destroyer and Sturmtiger heavy assault gun is just badass. Next up is 1943 with the famous Sdkfz 234 Puma. We're currently considering to introduce all variants, but for now you only get the 20mm variant. Excellent recon vehicle though. And here is one of the most famous tanks of the war, the Panther D. Technically a great vehicle, but it's costly to produce and even more costly to keep in service. Its reliability is honestly utter shit. XP upgrades are recommended unless you decide to skip it. Yes, you heard that right. It also gives you access to the excellent Jagdpanther tank destroyer, the quite nasty Koalian self-propelled AA, and the Geschützwagen Panther SP artillery. So about skipping the Panther. In the next year you not only get the cute Leopard light tank and its variants, a quite nasty vehicle with the long 5cm gun of the Panzer III L, but also the infamous Panther II. Yes, in reality this project was abandoned in 1943 due to the Panther D receiving quite some upgrades and especially the shirts and add-on armor, which made it more resilient against Soviet AT rifle fire from the flanks. But we decided to give you guys the choice to actually build it. Your factories will carry over some production efficiency from the Panther D, though you can't convert Panther 1s into Panther 2s, the hulls are too different. It gives access to the Jagdpanther II on top. A whole other option is the Panzer IV J. Being a refined and cheaper Panzer IV, its sole intention was to speed up the production of said tank. This included removing the electric turret drive, thus dropping the capabilities of the tank, and that's why it is a bit weaker in the damage department than the previous version. Even further to the right, you might already have spotted the even bigger beast of a tank, the heavy Tiger II, an absolute monster in terms of damage and armor stats. It is slow, much slower in fact than the Tiger I, and also unreliable and very costly. You will decide if it is worth it. Its variants are the extremely punchy Jagdtiger tank destroyer and the Geschützwagen Tiger SP artillery. Of course, I don't want to forget the mouse, but its stats are difficult to explain due to the smaller size of the battalion, and I think we all know that it would have been a shitty idea to build these. On we go to 1945 and the last tanks I will cover. Everything what comes afterwards is not yet properly designed and needs its stats corrected a bit, so is very much in flux. But these two beauties aren't. First up we have the dreaded Panther II with 8.8cm gun. A lot of wrong information circulate the internet about this machine, but we try to stay as trusty to the known facts as possible. As I said earlier, it is a known fact that the Panther II project was fully abandoned by 1943. Hence, a Panther II with 8.8cm gun never existed, even as a project. It all comes down to a mistake by the German tank historian Walter Spielberger, who was missing then still undiscovered documents and who thought the 8.8cm turrets designed for the Panther were for the Panther II. Anyway, we decided to give you the option for it since it would have made sense if the Panther II had been produced, and I think it is pretty neat. It also gives access to the very different Scorpion tank destroyer. Last, we have the Panther F. This tank was somewhat of the pinnacle of the Panther design, sporting a Schmalturm, advanced infrared systems, a new rangefinder system and better armor. It was a massive improvement. There was apparently also a project to stabilize the gun, but it is unclear how far this was developed and thus we did not take it into account. And finally, the projected autoloading system is also not included in the stats since we are not sure how far this was actually developed. And that's it. Our German tank tree. Everything past this point is very much work in progress, and there might be another edition, at least I asked for one, namely the Panther F with 8.8 cm gun, but this is more or less all important tanks. Now, I would like to thank you all for watching, and of course a special shout out to my awesome patrons Delta, Crazy Madman, Option 9, Galgenvogel and Galtur for their long-standing support, as also the major Twitch supporters Kaiser, Kain the Sword Lord, Jay Bizzle, Atlan, Miyamoto, and especially my friend Dolphin. With that being said, see you on the next video.